Can you have a huge round of applause for the official inauguration of Green Summit Punjab edition for a better, cleaner and sustainable future? So without taking much time, and request Mr. Tejveer Singh, the guest of honor for this summit, to deliver his special address on building partnerships for effective and sustainable energy ecosystem through policy and innovation, where we can talk about clean air, natural gas, everything. So your vision on that. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Goswami, the organizers of today's Green Summit, distinguished speakers. I think there'll be many more who will be joining later in the afternoon. And ladies and gentlemen, today we are all here to share some thoughts about this very important subject of building partnerships for effective and sustainable energy ecosystem through innovation and policy. Let me at the outset just bring focus to one of the terms that is used here, which is sustainable. It's an important term, and I think it's really that really lies at the crux of what we seek to achieve. The term sustainable actually came into currency in the world of development economics when this term was used in terms of sustainable development in the 1980s by the Norwegian Prime Minister. I think we were all students in school or college that time when this whole idea of sustainable development by Gro Harlem Brundtland, she used this term. And essentially it talks of factoring in the concerns of posterity into what we are doing today in the present. So that really, and it also underscores an important concept of what is sometimes known as intergenerational equity. Means that how what will our children and grandchildren do? Will they be paying for the sins or of commission or omission done by us, or we must pay for what we do and they must pay for what they do? At an operational level, of course, this term implies resilience. That is, what will endure to thick and thin. So now let's jump into sustainable energy ecosystem, which is really what we are here to discuss. Energy is emerging as probably the most fundamental building block in a country's economy. Today, in fact, it's even a more important prerequisite, many may argue, than even water supply. I mean, we all know we cannot live without water, but unfortunately, you cannot even pump water without energy. So energy is becoming increasingly critical, and I think it is really the entire economy is hinged around this whole concept of energy. Now, two developments in the recent past, and I would say in the last 6 to 8 months, which have underscored the importance of having a robust energy ecosystem, I think I'd like to just recount for you. Number one are the developments in Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka, as all of you are aware, went through a bit of a bad patch, and you had riots and you had a lot of political turmoil, largely emanating out of an energy crisis, and I think that has definitely raised a red flag for all policy makers in a country very close to India, in our immediate hinterland, a country which has really, from otherwise a peaceful country, reasonably well administered, but suddenly kind of going into a complete turmoil as a nation. So this really draws attention to the importance of a stable energy regime in a country. The second, something which also happened subsequent to that, was the onset of an early summer in March this year. And all of you are aware that there was this whole huge concern at the country level about possible coal shortages because the demand had suddenly increased. And I know I joined in this department on 18th of April. And for the first 2 months, I think we were almost having a daily, video conferencing with the Ministry of Power and the Ministry of Coal to check what are our coal stocks and will we be able to meet our energy requirements. So both these developments have really underlined the need for evolving a sustainable power system in the country that is resilient to withstand the vagaries of even climate change. Now, in the power ecosystem, well, there are a few principal stakeholders, and each of them has varying interests. So first, there are the generating companies, and what are they looking for? They are looking really for return on investment and stability of demand. They're concerned with both these things. You have distribution companies, discoms, who are looking for assured supply of power from generating companies for distribution to various class of consumers, and a policy regime which is stable, which ensures certainty regarding the payment of their dues. So that's what the discoms want. What do consumers want? Which are the main stakeholders are the consumers who want both reliable and cheap availability of power. So that's the consumer. And the last one, importantly, is the government. So what is the government looking for? The government is obviously looking for overall stability in the power ecosystem to ensure that power continues to be a fundamental building block of the country's economy and infrastructure. And it is also important for the government to ensure that it is able to finance the distribution companies of the subsidized power. All governments tend to subsidize power for certain categories of consumers. It's important that government can find the money to pay the distribution companies for the subsidized power. Now, coming to Punjab, with this little background, now Punjab's power demand is slightly more skewed. It's quite unique in some sense between what we have a lean season and a peak season. So during the lean season in winter, the demand typically varies around 6,000 plus minus megawatt in the day and around 4,000 megawatt at night. During the peak season, which starts beginning sometime in early April with the onset of summer and picks up and really gets into peak sometime from mid-June onwards, the demand can rise up to as high as 14,500 megawatts in the day, and the nights are usually 11 to 12,000 megawatts. So now for about 6 months in a year, when you have a demand of 6 to 7,000 megawatt, our power demand becomes more than double. So this year, we broke many records this summer in the amount of million units supplied in a day, the maximum power demand, which was about 14,300. So we broke the record a couple of times over. Now, this bell-shaped curve that we have, it imposes certain constraints and poses a lot of challenge for all of us. In terms of how much should our internal generation capacity be? Now, if you look at the states of the South, typically, they have a fairly stable, flattish, or with a very gentle escalation and gentle slope, increase or decrease of their power demand. In our case, we just rise and we become like this, and then we peter out again from mid-October onwards. So our internal generation capacity, the issue of fixed charges, because if you are setting up something and if you don't use the power, you have to pay generating companies their fixed charges as per the two-part tariff, and cost of procurement during the peak season. So when you need a lot of power during our paddy season, because Punjab grows paddy, which is a power-intensive crop because it consumes a lot of water. So to draw water, you need power. So you have to buy power at a reasonably expensive rate. So that itself poses a challenge. So for the power sector in the government, we need to have a minimum internal generation capacity. That's one. The two, we need to have banking arrangements with different states and their power entities, where there is some sort of synergy or complementarity in our power demand. And third, you need to have an adequate corridor, a transmission corridor from wherein you can wheel the power. There are times when people are willing to sell you power, but you don't have a corridor to wheel in the power. So all these three things are equally important for us. So Well, let me say for the present, I'm happy that PSPCL today is in the position to supply about 15,000 megawatts of power during peak season. So we have catered to, so this year, starting from end of April onwards, there have been no scheduled power cuts. There may have been technical, problems here and there, but there has been no scheduled power cut on any account. So despite the heavy demand and the vagaries of monsoon, for instance, we had a very, very good monsoon in the second half of June and July. So, Punjab was excess in terms of rainfall, about 35% excess at the end of July. But by the end of August, we were again deficit. So there was almost negligible rain in the month of, now each of these things, for most people, rain brings in good weather. But for the people of, in the power sector, the rain has different, 1 degree rise in temperature in peak summer means 1000 megawatt more of power consumption for PSPCL. So these are real challenges for all of us. We are also, of course, mindful that there is a increase in terms of power demand, which is going on, more industrialization, the falling water table, you need more energy to pump out the same amount of water. So, we are caught up in the paddy economy trap in some senses, but that's a larger discussion. So we do need to, but this also imposes some percentage increase every year. Now, the positive sign I must say here is that the market in power, that's the larger market in power, which has both private and public sector players, is becoming more sophisticated and to cater to various clients' specific needs. Renewables are growing at a very steady rate, which is a very healthy sign for all of us. And the good part is the prices of renewable energy are also showing a declining trend. And we do hope that as they become even more efficient, we can actually look at satisfying the larger issue, that is in terms of the consumer, that a cheaper cost of power, whether it is to domestic consumers or to industry. And that also has a direct impact on the government's finances, because there's a fairly high amount of power that is often subsidized. So the government has to pay lesser subsidy. So moment the price of power comes down, the government benefits in a big way. So that's the coming of the round the clock renewable power, RERTC, is again a very, very welcome step. So today you can have, slots at 15 minutes, so they have 96 slots in a day. So you can specifically say, I need power of this much power in these slots. So today, Solar Energy Corporation of India, we are also, PSPCL is in touch with them to look at, procuring some RERTC power going forward. We are trying to broad base our renewable portfolio. Already, PSPCL has tendered out for a couple of thousand megawatts of solar power, and I think the tender is out as we speak. And there has been some interest, and we hope more companies will kind of pitch more aggressively for this. We're also partnering with certain other states like Madhya Pradesh, and with whom we have some degree of complementarity in our power demand. Means when they have power, they are happy to sell to us because they have excess power. When we have excess power, we can, return back. So it's a banking arrangement. And it can lead to a cheaper and more efficient use of power resources. However, the important point to note, friends, is that the innovations do not alone lie in generation, because this is largely the story of generation. I think it's very important that we focus on distribution systems, as well as, the larger, the ecosystem of power. So that's wherein, we need to learn from successes of each other, success which other states, power utilities in other states are achieving. I think Punjab needs to learn from them. Some of the good things that we have done, I think others need to kind of learn and borrow from each other within India also. And the important thing I think going forward is the use of application of technology to make things better. I think it's important that PSPCL is completely an engineering organization. It's very important that we apply technology to make our working more efficient, and more effective. In fact, these days, the government of India does the rankings of power utilities. So you really get to know where you stand in comparison to others. And I think that friendly competition does generate some positive incentive for correction and improvement. So, lastly, today as we speak, it's what we under the rubric of this Green Summit. It's important to also be cognizant of the fact that in parallel, there's a very big conference of parties, COP27, which is happening in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh, and where the world leaders have gathered. And I think it's a few challenges, I think, which are relevant for the power sector is, number one, I think, is the impact of climate change. I think it's very, very important for all of us to make sure that the energy ecosystem becomes more resilient. So, for instance, let me just give you an example. In case if you have heavy rains in the retreating monsoon in, let's say, late September and October, in Chota Nagpur, coal mining is immediately hit. So there can be an artificial scarcity. You have the coal to mine, but the mining is hit. So just the monsoon coming in at the right time, and mind you, we are all today aware that we are going to have more and more extreme weather events. You may have 100 millimeters of rain falling in, half a day or in a couple of hours, leading to flooding in a city and other things. Or you may just not have even 100 millimeters of rain in a full month, 1 month, where you need at least 300 millimeters of rain as per your whichever part of the country you are. So it's important that the energy ecosystems start factoring in these issues. Now, for instance, let me say this year, we had premature summer, and that led to about 15 to 20% of decline in wheat productivity in Punjab. So these are real challenges which we all need to cater to. The second, of course, is the need to move away from fossil fuels to green energy and to make green energy cheaper. Look, at the end of the day, of course, the people who are in the business of green energy would say that the more we use, the cheaper it becomes. But the question is, for any entity to kind of start taking energy which is green or which is forward-looking, there's a cost factor in it also. So sometimes historically we take some decisions, but later on those decisions come to haunt us. Sometimes you sign PPAs which are expensive, because renewables were very expensive, but then there is a guarantee you have to honor the PPA. You cannot easily get out of it. So those issues because while doing this, the larger focus on cheap power has to be kept in mind. And I'm glad that India is doing well on the meeting our targets which we gave in COP26. So I think as a country, we are definitely ahead of what we have committed, and I'm sure the government of India as well as the states will ensure that we all move in that right direction. And the last, I think, is for private sector, and we will be happy to hear from Mr. Tejveer Singh, is to bring in both very efficient and cost-effective, cutting-edge technologies to India, to evangelize these ideas in India, and to make them more cheaper and acceptable to the people of India. So I'm sure today many experts will be sharing their thoughts with all of you, and the others will be joining later. I think these conferences really are an occasion, more than for us to really talk, is to really to learn from what others have to say. So with those words, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be with all of you here. And I hope we will all learn from we have a lot of representation from the state government, and I'm sure collectively we'll be all happy to learn from some of the good views that will be expressed by the speakers later in the afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Tejveer Singh, for giving us some insights on your vision for sustainable energy ecosystem for future. As you have rightly said, that whatever we are doing now, our core objective is sustainability. You talked about challenges. You talked about how it is more than ever important to make that energy ecosystem resilient. That is also a challenge. And again, we can see that challenge as opportunity, and also how fast we can move to the green energy sector as well. And as you have said, that it is also time that the government and industry can come together and partner with each other to create that comprehensive energy ecosystem. And that's why this kind of knowledge sharing platforms always help all of us to come out of a mindset of silo mindset and learn from each other, and so that some action can be taken on ground. Thank you so much. You talked about